everyone. Welcome to our session from wherever you're joining us. Let me quickly introduce myself. So, I'm Anupama and I'll be your moderator for this evening. We have with us four amazing women who've received admits from few of the top schools across, and I know all of us are eagerly waiting to get to know more about them and their journey. So please keep the comment section buzzing with all your questions. We'll try and answer as many as we can. And a quick touch point, this session is being conducted as part of the Students Fight COVID initiative, and we'll give you more information about that very soon. So let's kickstart today's session by a quick round of introduction. Over to you guys. Priyanka, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, thanks, Anupama. Hi, everybody. I'm Priyanka Vadva, and I'm heading to NYU Stern this fall. I am an engineer by profession. I am born and brought up in Mumbai, did all my education here, and I did my engineering from Mumbai University. Post that, I was working as a technology consultant in Deloitte, and then I shifted roles to finance consultant, and going to Stern to transition into the finance industry and hopefully make that happen. Okay, so I think, Alifia, if you could go next.
Yeah. Alifia, you're on mute. If you can just...
Oops, sorry about that. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today. I hope everyone's staying safe and well. So I'm Alifia. I did my undergrad in the US, and I worked with Deloitte for about 5.5 years after that, doing economic consulting within its tax practice, and I'm headed to Berkeley in the fall.
Hey, thanks, Alifia, for sharing. Hi, everyone. I'm Vandana Kamath. I was born and brought up in Mumbai, went on to pursue my engineering from BITS Pilani. And for over the last 4 years, I've been working at Microsoft as part of the sales and marketing team. This fall, I'm headed to Wharton. So over to you, Anjali.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Anjali. I am an engineer by graduation. I worked in tech for 2 years before I switched to social impact consulting. And I'm heading to Berkeley Haas this fall, hoping to continue my career with social impact.
Sounds great. So glad to have you all here. So Vandita, do you want to share more about the initiative itself?
Sure. Thanks, Anupama. So Students Fight COVID is actually 250 recent admits and current students from across the top universities across the globe who've come together to raise funds for a cause. We're offering our services in exchange for donations. And so far, we've mentored over 350 plus candidates and raised 23 lakhs over the last 2.5 weeks. Feel free to go ahead, check us out on our website, studentsfightcovid.in, as well as follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn, where we're very active and we have multiple sessions coming up over the next few weeks, and also have one-on-one consultations that you can seek advice for your MBA applications or any career guidance that you may want.
Great. Thank you so much, Vandita, for that. I mean, it's amazing what you guys are doing and have been able to achieve so far. So let's dig in right into the questions. I think no MBA journey can start without GMAT or GRE and just, the stress of testing itself. So my first question to you is regarding GMAT and how your experience was with GMAT. Anjali, if you could go ahead and take that question.
Sure. So I wrote GMAT twice, and it was, like everybody's first step, I guess, in some sense. I got a 690 on my first attempt and a 750 on my second. And I have to say that it was, I think the first time I wrote it, it was an ordeal that I wasn't prepared for. Like the stamina and focus of 4.5 hours. I think that really took me off guard, like that, despite all the, practice tests at home. And I think it also turned up a lot more, difficult than I'd imagined through the practice tests. So I had to kind of change the strategy before I went in for the second one. That was, I think, overall on the experience. And I think one thing I would that worked for me and I would suggest is to really be aware of what are the areas you can work on and improve on, and just keep a pause on the others where it is possible. Like for me, it was English. there was reading comprehension, and there was critical reasoning, which I was just unable to push my scores there. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep reading long form, but otherwise I'm not going to stress about it. There is quant and it's workable, and I'm just going to go with it. So I think that's the one thing I wanted to share about just being aware of where you can push it and where you can't. Yeah.
Right. I think that's a great strategy. If any of you want to pitch in, and yeah.
I think I can share a little bit. I've had, in fact, a very long GMAT journey. I started off somewhat similar to what Anjali said with the 690, applied to about 7 schools with a 720. And just like about 5 days before decisions came out, I sent an updated score of 770. I think across the multiple attempts that I've had, the difference was in my personal mindset. The earlier times when I took the test, I was under tremendous pressure of sorts. To just because I was sitting in front of a deadline. I remember that 5th of Jan and the 2nd Jan I'm writing a GMAT test. So don't make that mistake. I started the GMAT as well as prepping for my application simultaneously. As much as possible, try and keep it as one after the other. These are 2 very different parts of your application, and 2 parts that actually have a lot of impact. So your GMAT score, whatever said and done, is a very important part of your entire application package that you'll send to your schools. So take your time, invest in yourself when you're kind of studying for the GMAT. Give yourself that time. A lot of us would have lost touch to what studying for 2-3 hours a day feels like, and I think I took the longest to even come to terms with that I had to sit at one place and study for a while, right? So just kind of give yourself that time and crack the GMAT first, and then head on to the more demanding aspects of finding out what your story and other things are.
Right, some wonderful insights there. Priyanka, do you want to share as well?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to everything they said. Like, do not overthink while you're giving the exam. So one mistake that I made is I saw a very easy question come at around 26 or 27 question, and I just assumed that I had done the last few questions wrong, and I panicked, and that kind of reflected in my verbal section, because verbal was next. And I would also say we get those 7-minute breaks between the 2 sections. Utilize that to really calm yourself down and detach yourself, because what's gone is gone, and really focus on what's coming up next. Because I think even I had a 690 on my first attempt, like Anjali and Vandana. So I think one thing that I really did wrong was carry out the stress of my quant into the verbal. So do not do that.
Right. Sounds great. I think another score that the university started accepting recently is the GRE. Alifia, would you want to share your experience with GRE?
Yeah, sure. So I've had a quite interesting GRE GMAT experience, but I think one of the main reasons that I went ahead with the GRE was just I tested well. I tested better with the GRE. I think maybe it was the content, or I think maybe the shorter sections, 30-minute each sections in the GRE versus the GMAT, that fit better for me. I think to Vandita's point about starting early, like I decided that I wanted to apply to business school really late in the summer. And at that point, I was familiar with the GMAT. I had, studied a little bit for it the previous year. And I remember a friend of mine at that time told me that, maybe take a look at the GRE, see if that might be a better fit for you. And I gave a practice test, and I did pretty well. And at that point, I thought that, okay, maybe if I'm doing well right now, I can just maybe take a couple of exams and get it out of the way sooner rather than later, and then have more time for other parts of my application. So for me, it was also a little bit factor of time in terms of giving the GRE. And yeah, I think a lot of people also ask the question that, is GRE, giving it, does it put you at a disadvantage? And I don't think that's true. Most of the schools write on their websites that, GRE, GMAT, we don't have a preference. And I think the application as a whole is reviewed, and I was fairly confident about other parts of my application. Like I had a strong GPA, strong work experience, and I knew I had like solid recommenders as well. So I didn't worry too much about that. One thing I will say that a couple of schools use this ETS GRE conversion tool that converts your GRE score to the GMAT score. So I feel like both the exams are comparable in some sense, and most universities will do that anyway. So don't stress too much about it. Just go with the test that take the GMAT GRE together, maybe one after the other, see what format works best for you, and then maybe make a decision based off of that.
Right, right. That makes great sense. So let's dive into the application journey. So if one of you could go ahead and describe your application journey end to end, Priyanka or Alifia.
Sure, I'll start. So, like when I started with my application journey, the first thing I did was speak to a lot of people. I first thing I did is I exploited my own network, my friends who were in the US, who did MBA from the US, or who were just doing some sort of masters applications from the US. And something that I understood from them is that there are three parts. One is the GMAT, second is selecting schools, and third is the application process itself. And I decided that I'll take the GMAT first, and I tried to get it out of my way, but it didn't happen because I did not get my desired score. And I think that is one of the biggest advantages of starting early, that if you're not happy with your score, you can rewrite your test until your heart is satisfied or you're done with the exam. Either of the two usually happen. So I started preparing for the GMAT, and what I started doing along with it is, making an Excel of. I listed down all the schools, right, up to 40, 50, and I started some markers, right? What is the location? What are the jobs? Are there Indians? What is the fee? What are the placement opportunities? And then I just, what are the deadlines? What are the round one deadlines? What are the round two deadlines? And it was like it had a lot of data, but it really helped me narrow down some schools, right? And it also made me think about what is the thing that I am looking for. For example, I grew up in Mumbai, and I was sure that I don't want to go to a really small town because I might get really homesick. I need to have a lot of people around me. So then I canceled out a lot of schools in that way. So making that Excel not only gave me information about schools, but also at some level I knew what is really important to me. And once I started making that list, then fortunately at that time we were having events in person, so there were a lot of school events happening in Bombay, and I attended a lot of them, which really gave me a vibe of the school. Every adcom, every alumni, they're different in certain ways that you probably don't understand when you read their profile on LinkedIn or something, but when you speak to them, when you interact with them, you understand certain differences of every school. And I think that is very important because when you go to B school, it's just not about where you want to end up 2 years later, what you want to pursue, but you're going to spend 2 years of your life. So what is the kind of people you want to be with, what do you want your experience to be? I think those are very important factors, and I'm glad I considered them. I would have probably given them a little more weightage had I known this before, but yeah, I did that. I did all of that. I attended a lot of school events. I even attended school events which I knew I was not going to apply. I just attended, and that changed my mind about some schools. So I did that, and I was preparing for the GMAT. But once I was done with all of that, I think I started preparing my story, right? Like a high level story. Okay, what are my short term goals? What are my long term goals? One more thing I also did is I started writing down all the random stories that I thought were important from my college, from my school. I just wrote them in star format, which is situation, task, action, result. So when it came down to actually, writing the essays, I would just look at that and I would be like, okay, which story fits? Let me pick this, let me think more about it, elaborate it, and write it. So I think that was another thing that really helped me. And yeah, and then the process was just a lot of long hours, a lot of long nights finishing the application processes, and preparing for the interview. I mean, I used a lot of GMAT club to go through interview debriefs and read up the most asked interview questions. Again, I'm a fan of Excel, so again, put them all in the Excel, map stories against each interview question. Okay, this is the story that I'm going to talk about. And yeah, I also had an experience of getting waitlisted, and then trying to send in an update, but then thankfully I got my stern admit and I did not have to pursue that. But yeah, that's more or less my story.
I think it's a very, very structured approach to applications. It's just wonderful. Alifia, would you want to share your journey as well?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty similar to Priyanka in the sense of how she went about, figuring out which schools she wants to apply to and how she went about the entire process. I don't have much to add to that, but I will say that it's a long journey, depending on where you start. So take one day at a time, maybe. Keep things in perspective. Try to talk to people. Try to talk to people at work. Even lean on them to help you, because you're going to be really busy with applications and studying and interviewing and all of that. So I definitely had support in terms of friends and family who knew what I was going through. I took some time off work as well to focus on my applications towards the end of December, early January. So make sure you put that in your schedule as well, and you give people a heads up that that's something that you need to be focusing on, and block it off early on in your work calendar. I think that would be pretty helpful.
Right. That's great. So we all know that. Vanessa, did you have anything to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add,
Yes,
like
please.
Priyanka mentioned, this year because of the pandemic, a lot of the events were being held online, and as a lot of people who are applying next year reached out to me, I think one thing that's definitely there is that there are a plethora of events that are being held online now. Just go and attend, and get as much information as possible. You never know how your mind changes. I started off by thinking about applying only to 3 schools, expanded to 7 schools, and all of this was possible, although I was doing it pretty last moment, was because I had spent about the year prior to the application year just attending events, being very nonchalant about the way I went about things, meeting people, tapping into my own network at work, just trying to understand how is your MBA like. Okay, ask that question as often as you can to whoever it is, irrespective of if that's the school you want to go to or not. You never know what aspect of the MBA experience will really have an impact on you, right? A lot of the people will focus on the cohort and the experience that they shared. A lot of it would be about how the MBA let you pivot. So try and get these insights, as soon as possible and as much as possible. It doesn't really matter if that's the school you want to go to or not. Just get all of these insights and make it like your own black box of all the experiences that you hear from people. And then maybe when you are writing your essays, you can refer back to it and think about that person mentioned this. Maybe this experience is somewhat similar to that. Why don't I talk about this in my essays? So just something that worked out very well for me. I attended sessions well in advance, had like a diary where I would write down points, and then surprisingly, when I happened to kind of apply to those schools a year and a half later, I could refer back to those points, and just like although I was writing essays pretty last moment, I still had something to go back to, which made me feel a lot more calm and composed with the entire process.
Right, that just sounds great. We all know that starting early on with the applications has its own advantages, but can you help our audience understand what they are and how would it prove to be advantageous? Priyanka, would you want to take it up?
Sure, I'll take that up. So I think the first advantage is GMAT. We all plan to get it out in the first attempt, but a lot of us don't manage to. So if you start early, you really give yourself that buffer to give the GMAT second time, so that you can get your desired school, you can go to the school you want to, so that at the end of the day, you're not like, oh, I could have gotten, a better score, and I could have gone to, a better school or gotten better scholarships. So one is that. Second is, like Vandana mentioned, attending school events. Once you're going to do an MBA, and once you decide, you start keeping an eye on the schools, you start looking at their events, you start attending, you learn so much about the process, just by being there. Even if you don't have your GMAT ready, even if you don't know what the MBA application questions are, just by being there, you learn so much about the school. And I think it is really important, because you need to have that clarity while you're writing your essays. You can write the essay in 2 days, like Vandana mentioned, but that clarity needs to be built over time. You can't just wake up and be like, okay, I'm going to apply to this school and write your essay in 2 days. You should have some clarity from your background. So that, and I think the third really important point is you really get to introspect on your stories. So the first goal essay that you write is just, at that point you feel like, wow, it's amazing. But if you look at it 1 week later, you're going to be like, oh no, this doesn't make sense. And you're going to, you're going to see the gaps, you're going to want to fill them in. You might even scratch the whole essay and write a complete new essay. that happened with me. I mean, I wrote some essay and I was like, this is good. And then after 1 week, I was like, no, I'm not going to, I cannot apply with this. So, you really get time to introspect your stories. You can reach out to people in your network and ask them to give you feedback. And yeah, people are happy to do that. They'll give you some genuine points about your essays. And if you're running late, you don't have the time to do all this. So it's really good to do this. And if you're ready early, you can also target more schools, because round one and round two, you can split schools. You can do target, reach, and safety schools in all the rounds, and you can cover your bases, which is really a good thing to have, because then you're making the choice of where you really want to go, instead of, oh, I just got an admit from this one school, so I'm going to go here. So I think these are some of the advantages that I think, that is why you should start early.
Right, great. You mentioned, yeah. Go ahead,
I just
Anjali.
wanted to add one thing here, and I think Priyanka alluded to it, and it's super important. The fact that you get to bounce some of these ideas off with, your friends and your peers, and even giving people time to write the LORs. Like, I know in like many cases we prepare drafts. In some cases, they want to write it themselves. And then within a 3 to 4 month timeline to pressure somebody into doing that. And these are people in, senior positions in big companies. And I don't think you do justice to that relationship and to your entire process, right? So I think just being mindful of the fact that you're not the only one in this journey. Like, there are some 5 other stakeholders and they all need that time. So I think adding that really gives a good buffer. I think for me, 6 months really worked, but I know friends have taken a year. So it's really, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just such a wonderful point to keep in mind. Priyanka mentioned about, different rounds in applying to round one versus round two. So, Vandana, can you just explain as to, or any suggestions as to applying in round one versus round two?
Yeah, sure. I think it's pretty much in continuation to what Priyanka mentioned. But I actually started thinking about my story. So just to clarify, when I mentioned that I wrote essays in a day or two, I actually started thinking about what my goals were, what my story was going to be sometime around July, because I was really targeting round one, right? But unfortunately or fortunately, GMAT didn't work out. That gave me like 4 more months to really think, reach out to people who I probably wouldn't have, got advice from had I applied in round one, and get that 4 month more buffer to actually review what I was talking about in my essays, to actually ensure that I was portraying my best self, right? So that was, when I had reached the round two deadlines, I had actually seen one entire application season, seen what my friends had been through, and then kind of gotten insights from them as to what schools are talking about, what are they looking for, understood from their experiences while they interviewed, and put all of that knowledge base into my round two application. So that's something I would definitely say that it's not an overnight effort. It's a longer journey, so plan for it as a long journey. Coming to the question of like between round one and round two, I think for me it wasn't it didn't really impact that, although a lot of people, while initially I said that, hey, I'm going to go apply in round two, the general feedback is that round two for maybe an Indian applicant is not the best time to be. I can definitely say that I got 2 admits at Haas and Wharton, and both with approximately a 50% tuition scholarship. And that's nothing to do between round one and round two. So obviously in round one, there is a higher probability of getting a scholarship. There is also a lot more seats available, but go when your application or you as a package seem most comfortable. Do not rush applications because it takes its own time. As Anjali mentioned, you need your recommenders to be on the same page as you are. You need a lot of things to work out at the same time. So give yourself that time, right? The only thing that I have realized between round one and round two is that identify if you think that you belong to a category where a lot more people are going to be applying. And I think that's typically true for someone with a consulting background. Especially, I've seen a lot of my friends applying from a consulting background, and that tends to be very similar experiences that you have prior to the MBA. So in case you do fall in one such bracket, I would definitely say go ahead, apply in round one. But if you do have very differentiated experiences, which you can, which you feel very comfortable and proud of, hold on to till the time where your application seems the best for you. So between round one and round two, try and identify where your strength lies. If you are ready by round one, nothing like it, just go ahead and apply, hit submit as soon as possible. But if that's not the case, take your time, wait till round two. Maybe the new year has better things to for you in store, and go. Like, it's never too late to apply, so just go ahead and do that.
Right. I think that was so wonderful to hear. So apart from GMAT and GRE itself, how did your journey start? Any insights on that, Anjali?
Sure. So I think when Priyanka mentioned the starting of the journey where she had an Excel sheet and like she had these colleges, I think a lot of us started out that way. And I think it's a very structured and great approach. That for me was step one as well, where there was an Excel sheet with a list of 10 schools. But I think what was important was, on a whole, yes, that these are some parameters that you want to, be mindful of no matter what, your score is. So, that there are some schools that you will apply for, and, the only way to getting there is to improve your score. But I think that said, really refining your search, and before you reach out to more people, or at least, that's a personal opinion. I thought it made sense to get the GMAT out of the way. And I think because getting that score gave me the confidence of pruning that 10 to a 4, right? And it also gave me that confidence of reaching out to the admissions committees of those colleges and saying, hey, I have some questions. Can you get some of these things clarified? I'm not able to find it on your website. Can you put me in touch with, alumni who have done similar roles that I have? Because I think largely in my network of people who were applying to MBAs, I come from a non-traditional background, and I just couldn't find stories that relate. So just not being able to, I think, do that made it important to reach out to other people. And having the GMAT score really helped. So I think, that's just my opinion. Of course, there are many different ways of going about it, but to me, that was step one. Yeah.
Right, great.
Just to add, sorry, I was just going to add to what Anjali said. I think there is a little bit of being intentional in the entire process. So, as intentional and as soon as you can get intentional, the better it is for you. What I did was I kind of leveraged all my work trips whenever I had a chance to get to anywhere close to a city that had an MBA college, I would go and visit it. So although I'm ending up at schools which I did not visit, but it definitely gives you a lot of feel of like what the place is like. When you interview with someone, and you've visited the school, the connect that you can build just based on what you've seen over there and what, how the culture is. I think those are great insights. And I know that this is not possible, especially during the pandemic, or people, even I know that, I felt a little like, oh, should I be visiting all 7 schools, or should I visit just 1 or 2? I couldn't make that decision. It's in case you have the option, go ahead and do it. Nothing to lose out on. And if you don't, then make that effort to do virtual tours, which are available right now. Try and do as many campus tours, connect with students, current clubs. But that could be like your step one. Even before you get to the essays and figuring out what matters, right? So that should definitely be a part of your application journey.
Great. I think doing so will also help zeroing in on colleges. Where do you want to apply? Where do you want to study? That's a great pointer. So you guys have been talking about the research you do, even before starting the application. So what are some of the things that, you look for to figure out during your research phase? Alifia, if you want to take that up.
Yeah, I think there are a number of factors that you should decide what are most important to you. So for me, what mattered most to me was class size, location, and where MBAs were going after graduation. For me, location more so because I was already in the US, and I knew I didn't want to be in certain parts of the US. And just like Vandita was mentioning, I did have the opportunity to visit a few schools. Like I went to Stern. I took the train up to New Haven to visit Yale. So if you can do that, I think that's a great way to get on campus, network with the admissions committee, meet current students, meet potential incoming students as well. So I think it's important to make a list, maybe another Excel sheet, of what is most important to you, and then go from there.
Right. Sounds great. Priyanka, do you want to pitch in as well?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I really look for is like I'm from consulting background and I wanted to shift into finance. So will that opportunity be really available at the school? And obviously the culture of the school, which I think I've spoken about already a lot. So apart from that, the opportunities, and I also tried to understand what really differentiates the school. Like every school, if you just go on the website, you will see one statement which is their statement, and you can usually associate a school with that. So I tried to do a lot of that. Like, okay, I will read up about a school for a couple of hours, and then what are the first few words that come to my mind about the school, and I would just note them down. They would become like the most important keywords for those schools, and I would use that to make a decision about if I want to really apply to the school. And another thing that I did is I made a roadmap. Okay, so it didn't work out really, but I kind of said that, okay, I'm starting in May, so I want to finish GMAT by this date. This is the date that I will finalize schools. This is the date that I will reach out to my recommenders. This is the date I will give them questions. So I just created a roadmap of the entire process, and it did not. A lot of it didn't work out. I mean, boundaries were pushed and stuff. But at least, even when things were pushed, I kind of had a check that, okay, I am due for this. So it helped me focus on the entire application and not just get stuck to one thing.
Right, right.
I had a quick
Perfect.
point on
Yes.
research, and I think, location is something that everybody has mentioned, and it's super important. I just wanted to call it out specifically for some industries where it's not like, so for instance, if I want to recruit into consulting, I may say that, oh, there are more candidates being recruited from college A than college B, but the fact is those companies are still coming to college A and college B. But in case of certain specific career paths, you have to figure out for yourself. You have to find that network. And in that case, you really want to think about, is my location going to allow for that? So, like in my case, I know I want to continue in social impact. I know that it's going to be super hard for me to do that sitting in, a place that's far away from a city. So I wanted to be close to a coast or a city. And I think those questions also to kind of check in with other people and find out, how hard is networking in non-traditional roles. That's just something that I thought, is something that you guys should think about.
Right, right. Wonderful point.
I think just to add to what Priyanka and Anjali was saying, right? So the way you look at research is one, always think of it from a career standpoint. Will the school be able to meet my career goals? Help me meet my career goals. That's one. The second bit is there's always going to be things that you are most passionate about, right? These could be your hobbies, topics that you really care about, things that you want to explore during the MBA, which the last 4 or 5 years at work haven't really made it possible for you. So the way I looked at a school was, twofold. One is in terms of extracurriculars and clubs and all the other stuff that's available as part of being the community at the school. And then the second one was more career focused. So maybe that's how you can structure your research around. Spend some time figuring out probably I want to do consulting, or maybe I want to stay in tech. So can this, does the school let me do that? There's a huge, bias between East Coast, West Coast, maybe Europe not having as many tech opportunities. So why don't you, individually sit and identify which of those is actually true? Because frankly, I don't think, a lot of that holds for the top schools, because most of the opportunities are available across the board. So that was just something that I wanted to add.
Right.
When Vandana spoke about that, I remember something else. I'm really sorry. Especially, and this is only for social impact. I do want to call out the fact that, and I realized this very late in the journey, there are schools that offer loan repayment programs. Wharton does, Haas does. There are schools that have internship funds for if you're doing your internship in social impact. And so there are support systems. So look out for those support systems. If they're not there on the website, ask for it, and you might just be surprised.
Right, that's amazing. So we have a lot of new joinees. Vandita, if you want to go ahead and just introduce about the initiative, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks. So, we're here today through Students Fight COVID. Students Fight COVID is a student-run initiative where 250 recent admits and current students from across top MBAs across the globe have come together to raise funds for the current COVID struggle in India. So far, over the last 3.5 weeks, we've been able to raise around 23 lakhs and also help out to 350 plus mentees. And we're doing this through one-on-one consultations, helping with GMAT boot camps, as well as career guidance. So I'd really encourage if you all can sign up, donate and sign up. We're on www.studentsfightcovid.in, as well as find us on Instagram and LinkedIn. So yeah, looking forward to connect with a lot more folks who've joined us today this evening.
Sounds great. Getting back to the questions. So you've spoken about how you can learn more about schools and you've, advised to reach out to alumni. But how can one actually do that? Any advices on that? Olivia, if you want to take that up.
Yeah, sure. So there are a number of ways to do that. I think a good place to start is just reach out to the admissions committee at any school and ask them to, put you in touch with people who, or a field that you're interested in and people have gone there, or current students who are looking to who are exploring the same field that you are. So I think the AdCom is a great way to get started with respect to that. I've also just emailed people on LinkedIn, just send them an email, introduce yourself, and chances are that more likely than not that they'd be happy to help out. Another thing that helped me was, again, relying on my network, like talking to friends, talking to co-workers. I remember that I had a colleague at work and her sister-in-law graduated from Fuqua. And I ended up having a great multiple conversations with her, like when I interviewed at Fuqua, and even after that. She's in the Bay Area, so hopefully I can be in touch with her, once I get to Berkeley. So yeah, tap into the alums from your own college, your own network, friends, co-workers, and definitely don't be afraid to reach out on LinkedIn.
Right, that's a great point. Yes, Priyanka.
Yeah, I just have one thing to add. So a lot of schools have a list of people, have their graduate ambassadors mentioned, and you have the option to filter by industry, you have the option to filter by location, you could do all of that. And one other thing that worked for me, so every school has a lot of clubs, right? You have the consulting club, you have the finance club, you have healthcare club. You just go and check out who the presidents of the club are or the co-presidents of the club are, and you message them on LinkedIn. Sometimes you will find email IDs, so you just shoot them an email and talk to them more about, because they will be able to give you specifics about what you're really interested in. So I think that is another way to really reach out to the students.
I think the other unsaid rule is, it's not a rule really, but something that always works to your advantage is try and stalk a little bit on LinkedIn, but try and find the person who's had as similar as an experience as you have. It doesn't mean that you can only achieve what they have. You can probably do a lot better, but it does help to get into that frame of mind as to how they applied and what were the strengths and what really was the weakness applying with that particular background. So just something to keep in mind when you're reaching out on LinkedIn. Try and get to people who have somewhat similar backgrounds, and that will probably open the conversation to something a lot more relevant to you than just reaching out to someone who doesn't have a lot in common.
Right. Loving the conversation, some great insights. I think another really difficult point for applicants is the essays itself. So if any of you can tell me more about how did you go about writing your first essay? Anjali or Priyanka?
I can start with that. I started with Stanford's essay first, and what an essay to start with. But I think it really helped, and this was the essay that I started in the beginning, and everything else just tumbled down from there. It was the question of what matters the most to you and why, and I think it's a great drawing board for anybody applying to any school to think of, why am I doing this in the first place? Even if it leads you into a bit of an existential crisis, it's worth it, because I figured out my entire journey through that essay. There were, I think, two things that I felt was important here. One is to really think of what were the patterns in the decisions that I took in the past. And so then what makes sense next. So that was, one thing. And the second thing was, what are one or two factors that are unique to me and to the school? So in my case, the school has a focus on, diversity and inclusion. So playing it in two fronts and saying, A, professionally, I'm interested in gender and how is that aligning? And B, personally as a woman leader, how is the school going to help me and how am I going to, help the school? And I think it's important to keep in mind that the school should read through your essay why that's cool, even though you're not very, you're not being overt about it. Like, what is it about this person's ambition that a Haas can support and say, some other school can't? I think that needs to come out just in the way you articulate, your goals and stuff. So, yeah.
Right. Sounds great. Okay, so my next question is, just give me a minute. I sort of lost it. Right. Yeah. So what parts of applications are school specific or common across schools? Vandana?
Yeah, so I can definitely take this up, given the plethora of schools that I've applied to and had the experience with. What I will say is, as Anjali mentioned, starting with a really tough essay, which is what matters most to you, is a good point to start at. But there are also times when you just want to get done with things. I would recommend that you typically break up, all schools ask you two kinds of questions. The first one is, what are your goals and how can I help you? And the second one would be what it really is your personal story. So look at your essays in these two fashions. Now, a lot of the schools, especially say a Kellogg, doesn't really ask you more specifically as to why do you want to come to our school, right? But they always want to see that in your essays. So, in terms of where to bring out your research and where to bring out why you're the perfect fit for the school, and this has to come out across in both your essays. It doesn't have to be just your career, but it also has to come out in your personal story. So I spoke a lot about diversity and inclusion, as Anjali mentioned. I spoke a lot about, design thinking, things that I was very passionate about. And I had certain ideas which I wanted to bring to that school. So these were aspects that actually came about in my, personal essay. Whereas in terms of my career, I focused a lot more on the kind of change that I wanted to bring about and how that school in specific was the only place that could probably offer me that breeding ground for my ideas to really fulfill. Things to look out for in terms of school research is mention professors, mention the labs that they're associated with, the companies that they're associated with, and problems they're trying to solve that's available online. There's also another way to talk about the clubs that you have interacted with and that you think you'd make a good fit for as a leadership role if you're given a chance to be a part of that school. So that's a second place to mention, be school specific. And overall, I think, as I mentioned earlier, even if the school doesn't explicitly ask for why Haas or why Kellogg, go ahead and put that in your essay, especially for a school like Haas. I know that, it's just 300 words, but in that 300 words, as close as you can get to why Haas, I think that's what will, kind of make the school realize that you've done your research, you know exactly what you want from the school and from the experience, and that helps you stand out. So just kind of, focus on your personal story and what the school has to offer and ensure that elements of both are present across your application.
Right, great. My next question is towards, the sort of red flags you had in your application, and if you did, how did you go about covering for them?
I think let's go in the application order. I'll start with the low GMAT. I applied with a 720, right? And I knew that my GMAT was going to be like the red flag for me. What I did very intentionally was, I got, like, out of the 7 schools that I applied to, I got an interview invite from 5 schools. And never in my interview did I bring about the aspect that, this was something that I was not confident about, right? So there are different ways to address your red flags, especially about the GMAT. There are multiple ways. Some things that I did do was, one, on my applications, I had a few certifications that I had done. I kind of listed them out in the application in the section where they ask about other information. That's one way to deal with it. The second advice that I'd also like to give is, I made this mistake personally. I told Kellogg that I'll take the GMAT again and I'll send you an updated score. That didn't happen because my updated score wasn't better than the earlier one. So don't mention it in your application that you plan on taking the GMAT again, right? If you do take the GMAT again, most schools, although they kind of say that, hey, we're not going to accept a new score, they're more than happy even 5 days before the decisions to hear from you. So go ahead and send the update, but don't be as intentional, and acknowledge your red flag. Your weakness should be something that only you know, and you don't kind of repeat it again and again. So that was another thing, that play with your strengths. Don't really focus a lot on your weakness, because there are most schools say that they look at multiple factors, and I like to believe that's the case, because if not for that, I don't think 5 schools would have reached back. So that's probably how do you deal with a low GMAT. And I think take as many attempts as it takes to get a good GMAT score. Whatever I invested in taking my GMAT again, I think I've gotten back in terms of a scholarship. So that's my only advice. Don't give up on the GMAT. It's a stupid test, takes longer than required, but go for it.
Right, great. Anjali?
I'll go with the extracurriculars bit, and that this is something that worried me like crazy, because I had a huge imposter syndrome building, watching all the other applicants with stellar extracurriculars, and being able to really speak about this, weave it into their stories, right? Not just having it on your resume, but the fact that you can show that you're made of more than what your work is, or your GPA is. And so, I approach this in 2 ways. I think if you stick to the concept of, beyond GPA and work, then one thing is, it's very possible that you did some, one thing in college, which is what I did. I did one club in college, but I went I dove like a lot into it, right? I was immersed in it for a large point of time. I made sure to really pull out outcomes from that work, to really quote examples in my interviews. That was one thing. I think the second thing, which I think is more relevant and more, I'm sure many of you will have the option to do that, is how are ways in which you've contributed to work without like over and above, say, what your project required you to do. And many people who work in startups have this opportunity. Many people who work in, corporate also have this opportunity. So it's kind of, and if you don't, then maybe you want to use this time to kind of build that, presence outside of your, so I might in sales before before I needed to. I was working on leadership development, and nobody asked me to. So those were things that, you can talk about it, because they're initiatives that you worked on, and it shows a little bit more character, shows a little bit more to you than what, the bullet points on your resume would. So I think look at it as a concept, and not so much as, I need these many points under extracurriculars. There are like different ways of going about this.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to the extracurriculars point, something that came up. A lot of times I know people reach out saying that, is an international experience really required? One thing that I can tell you is that, especially given the pandemic and, the kind of opportunities available to interact with people across the globe, try and utilize this as a way to kind of build a more international, probably volunteer with different organizations, or find opportunities to do that. You don't actually have to be present, in that country or in a different country. It's all about the experiences that you can gather along the way. So not really a red flag, but it doesn't mean that you need an international experience, but try and gather as much as possible.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about recommenders. So the people who wrote my recommendation letters, they weren't my immediate direct supervisors at that point in time. And the reason was that I had just transferred offices, and I didn't want to tell them that, hey, I'm thinking of leaving within a year or less than a year at that point. And I also felt like they didn't know me as a person as much based on the projects I had worked with at that point in time. And I wasn't confident that they would provide like an accurate picture of like my strengths and abilities. So I did end up asking 2 previous supervisors. That I will say that the time between when I last worked with them wasn't that long. So it might have been maybe less than a year. So just keep that in mind. If you are going back, like way back, I don't think it should be more than 2-3 years, unless you really feel like you work directly with them and they were like your only supervisor. So I think the best place to address it is really in the supplemental essay. Just be honest. I was honest. I told them that I just moved, cities. I have new clients, new responsibilities. I'm not comfortable disclosing this at this point in time, and I just left it at that. But I don't think it's a red flag as such, but I think it's important I just erred on the side of caution and I just put it in there. So yeah, definitely use that extra space in the supplemental essay to do that.
Okay, so I would like to talk about being from this overrepresented category. So, I'm an engineer and I did tech consulting, which comes very close to IT consulting. And we're one of the most overrepresented category. Like a lot of people apply, and I did my engineering from not one of the cream colleges of India. So I thought this was a very big red flag in my application. And I think how I looked at it is how am I really different? So there are a lot of things that I went on doing within my 5 years at Deloitte, which was not a part of my actual work. Taking there are things like impact day, leading impact day, and even in teams taking a stand for somebody. Or I thought of it as, okay, what was the one thing that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't here? And I really tried to plug that into my story, because I was trying really hard to differentiate myself. And I thought it was going to be very difficult, but honestly, when I started thinking like, okay, what do I really add, how do I make it different? And in every experience, right, it could be leading a team, it could be leading an initiative, it could be doing small things in college. You realize what is typically which you can point out the things and say, hey, I did this, I proposed this, and this probably wouldn't happen. And I think bringing that out in your application is very, very important. You may think it's insignificant, you may think, but okay, does it really matter? But it really does, because you need to give your admissions committee how to separate you from everybody else. They need to create an image of you, and I think that is very, very important. So I focused a lot on that, because I was very underconfident that there are so many others like me.
Right. Some great pointers. Our comment section is buzzing with a lot of questions. So after answering this, we'll get to the viewers' questions. Any advice to the current applicants?
I think I'll just add a little bit with respect to letter of recommendation. So chances are that whoever you are asking to write these letters, they're not like great writers, or they may not have even written letters before. So when I reached out to my people, I gave them 2-3 months, heads up, and I send them an Excel file with links to each, each school's website, sample questions, which are, I think, pretty standardized now across schools. And I also send them, like, I think Clear Admit has a recommendation guide how to write one. So I sent that in the email as well, so that they had like some starting point in order to make their lives easier. And I think that guide also has sample letters as well. So definitely point that out in your email. I think one more thing that helped was I scheduled a time to talk to them and really explain my goals and motivations for doing an MBA, so that they felt included in the process and that they had that background while they wrote the letter. And I also reminded them of instances where I felt like I had performed strongly and exhibited like leadership. And I think they appreciated that, because sometimes they forget, or it's nice to just have that reminder and that extra help when they write the letter. So just be a little mindful, and your goal should really be making their lives easier, and I think that goes a long way. And one more thing I want to add with respect to that is also many applications have a section where you can put in a referral as well. Like I know Fuqua has an entire form, but Haas also I think had one section where you could list current students or professors, alumni. So make sure you use that and point out. I think that's a great place to show that you've spoken to people and that you've done your research. So make use of that as well.
I have just one thing to add. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So there are going to be good days. There are going to be bad days. Don't give up. Just be consistent. It's not like if you get a very bad score on one test or a very good score on one test, it's not over. It doesn't end even with scoring a very good GMAT score. Just be consistent, and yeah, it'll happen. It'll work out. Consistency is the key.
I absolutely agree with what Priyanka said. And just to add, it's never too early to start and it's never too late to start as well. That's the first thing. The second bit is also that don't self-eliminate. Like I know that there were days when I felt, hey, my GMAT score is not good enough. I shouldn't apply to these, few schools. Don't do that. Let the schools take the chance. If, just be confident in yourself, because the process has its own ways of like undermining your confidence. Don't let it do that. Just be yourself, be confident. And I think, it's really just knowing yourself through the process will help you stay calm and stay, on the ground. So just be yourself. Yeah, that's probably what I, kind of stick to.
Yeah, I think the point about confidence being very key, and I think as an all-women panel, I can say that it's not. It is often that you come across people who haven't, who kind of lack that confidence, and that's really what's holding them back. That's just nothing else. And I can say that for myself, I did go in, very nervous into this whole process. I was applying for the first time. I didn't have people who had, in my network who had applied, and so it was always a question of, am I doing this right? Is this something that might work out, might not work out? All of that was weighing on my mind. If I'd known that I was going to crack 3 of the 4 admits, I would have gone in with a lot more of confidence, right? And I think it really showed, because at the end of the day, during my Stanford interview, I was just like, I was trembling and it didn't come through. Like I think this is just very obvious to the other person when you are not feeling your best self on that day. And it's very important to feel your best self, especially during the interviews. So I think just have faith.
Yeah, just to add to what Anjali said, in fact, for me, most of my Stanford interview was like, it was an opportunity that I didn't expect, right? So every opportunity that I got I felt that, hey, I wasn't even considering applying to the school, and I've made it this far, so I should just make the best of what I have. So I think the attitude that you need to go in with was, be grateful that you're there in that moment, and just take it as it comes. Nothing is dependent on that one interview or on that one application. There are multiple ways, for a school to get to know you, and they do a good job at it. So, trust the process, trust the system. It works out in the end pretty well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think some great pieces of advice there. Let's quickly move on to our viewers' question. So a lot about GMAT, and guys, these questions have been answered, so please feel free to, go back on YouTube and just check it out. Okay, so the first question is from Vinayak. When is the right time to start your application for round 1? Also, what do you think is the best time to give the GMAT? We've briefly covered this, but if anyone wants to take a go at it.
I think if you want to be really specific, I would say, depending on the number of schools, you should decide your timeline. The first school will typically take you about 3 to 4 weeks. Post that, maybe every additional school can be, crunched into 2 weeks. So just keep that in mind. If you're doing about 5 schools, give yourself 3 months. You will require that time to write all essays, to go through the entire process. So that's probably how to look at it, and back calculate from where you start. Maybe something like what Priyanka did in terms of creating a roadmap would be a good way to get started.
Right, great. Okay, so our next question is from Gokul. How much time did you take to build your applications, essays, resume, etc.? A lot regarding timelines.
I think 3 months, I think like Vandana said, 3 months is ideal, right? Like you give yourself that time so that you get to go over your stuff again and again and again, and change things, revamp things. Things like your resume do not happen in one iteration. You just can't sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to finish my resume. You do it today, then you do it again and again. So I think three months is a good window. Like from my opinion, it's a good time to give yourself to finish 5 applications, to go through the entire process, to speak to your recommenders. So yeah, I would say that's a good time.
Right, great. So Urvi has a question with respect to activities one should take up during their job to boost CVs. Any takers?
any and every opportunity that you have to learn. Consider it as a way for you to get to know what you want to do post an MBA. Don't treat it as trying to build your resume. It never works out that way. Just try and, I would say, diversify your interests as much as possible. Get to as many opportunities as you can. It's the best time for you to get to know yourself. So just do that and use the process to your benefit, irrespective of how the results come out.
Right, great.
I would just like to add one
Yeah.
thing here. Focus on quality, not quantity. So don't go about doing 10 different things. Try to take one thing and take up a leadership role, or really create an impact using that one opportunity instead of, putting your hands everywhere. So really focus on what you want to do, what you like doing, so that your heart is into it and you can really create impact.
Right, great. So Ruhi has a question. If any of you quit your job to prepare for B school applications, I don't know if that would be wise, but I lost my job due to COVID. How do you think it would affect my application?
While I do know of someone who's in my Wharton cohort who's gone through a very similar experience, although it's unfortunate, I think there are ways to spin the story. So just spend this time that you've gotten back to yourself, figure out what really it is that you can do and add to yourself. So maybe it's some initiative that you want to take by yourself, something that you basically make the most of the time that's available to you. I think schools are concerned about your employment prior to the school, because they also look at where would you get employed post the pandemic, right? Post the MBA, sorry. So that's something to keep in mind, but there's always a positive spin to every story. So try and see what your positive spin could be, and I think it should be fine. You just need to figure out how to play your cards well.
Right.
Also, just to add to that, I think it's also good time, while you're looking for another job, maybe take up some pro bono consulting work with a nonprofit, because community impact does matter, I think, at every school, and it's a good chance for you to network with people and gain some transferable skills in the process. So definitely look for those opportunities. And I think if you're also confused in terms of what to do next, like what I found really helpful is going back to my career management center at my undergrad university, and just speaking with them and asking them for like tangible help steps to for you, how you can improve your situation or go about looking for new jobs. So yeah, just tap into your university network as well.
Right, great. So Mudra has a question. If 2 years of experience is enough to get admitted to an MBA program? I think a very, very common question.
I've seen applicants across the spectrum. So it's between 2, 5, 7. You can have any number of years of experience. What really matters is how clear are you in your thoughts as to why you need the MBA. So there is no minimum recommendation. So just go ahead and apply when you think you really can justify the MBA. At the end of the day, it's like 2 years that you're going to spend on yourself, right? So it's probably an opportunity for you to learn and grow the most. So use it at the right time. Maybe doing an MBA too soon will leave you, probably you wouldn't know what all is a possibility, what you like and what you don't like. So use it at a stage where you have some more clarity as to where you want to be, and you can really use all the opportunities and make the most of what the school has to provide to you.
Right, great. So we have a lot of questions regarding admission consultants. So if you were to answer this, did you take any help of any consultants? I'm in confusion, which consultant should I choose? GMAT score of 760. So maybe, is it necessary to actually go to an admission consultant? Maybe something on those lines.
It depends on the situation you are. I wouldn't say it's absolutely necessary to go to an admission consultant. I know a couple of people who got into great schools without admission consultant, but if you have a network of people, who are your sounding board, who will give you feedback, who will give you genuine feedback, or if you're a person who can just stay with a thought for a really, really long time, introspect, and come up with identify your flaws, find ways to fix them, then you don't really need a it's not a compulsory thing that without an admission consultant you will not make it. But Of course, there are people with years of experience, so they might be able to get you better scholarships, or they might be able to enhance your profile. But having said that, if you have that in your own network, if you have your friends who've gone to top schools, if you have your family members, use them as a sounding board, and yeah, just and be confident. It also depends on how confident you are. If you are confident, you know your story, you know what you want to write about, you don't need an admission consultant, because they're going to take your story and enhance it for you. If you have that, then great.
And also
I'd just
choose
like to
wisely. I just to add to that, choose wisely, because I remember I spoke to an admissions consultant and I just had like, I felt really overwhelmed after that. And I'm sure like different people are different, and I ended up feeling really put down after that conversation, because for different reasons. But yeah, if you're going with it, make sure that person really understands you, and they are willing to work with you. And yeah, if you have the extra money that you're willing to spend, I don't think it's a bad idea, but they are really expensive. So if you have your network, like Priyanka was mentioning, definitely lean on that.
I mean, my view on admissions consultant, I think, is that you definitely, can use some help, extra help during the process. And concerned, in terms of the cost that Alifia mentioned, the way I kind of justify it to myself was that if I'm going to be spending like $200,000, the start to the process is a very like it's a token amount, and think of it as an investment in yourself, because the process is it requires a lot of like thinking, it requires a lot of strategizing, it requires a lot of probably things that you don't know are like aspects of your candidature that stand out, right? And you need someone to literally help you formulate that. So I did reach out to admissions consultant. I in fact used someone from the Seven Hats team. So definitely evaluate it, see where it stands. If you have someone really close, a close friend who's been to that school, I think I found my friend to be a better sounding board. Whereas if you don't have any insights on how the school is, I found my consultants inputs to be super helpful. So kind of weigh where you stand on the process. Get a consultant. There's nothing wrong in it. If you are completely invested in the process, it makes sense to have help as early as possible.
I just wanted to top that with, I think in terms of, I mean, what Priyanka said, resonated with me a lot. But I think what Alafia said about the cost as well, right, to kind of bring it together. At least in my case, the cost was way. And while I eventually did not take up a full-time, consulting and a thing with a consultant, what I did do was I kind of broke down that application and figured out where it is that I was facing a challenge. In my case, for instance, it was with the goal, right? Like I didn't know how far aspirational to go and how far realistic to keep it, because there's also that very fine line of, where do you shine the best. So
I think Anjali is breaking up a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in my case,
yeah.
it was I went with Admission Arrow. So they have something called a discovery package. It's quite I would say relatively inexpensive. It's just a 1-hour session, but they have a great framework to really put in all your thoughts. And through that 1 hour, they really asked me. In fact, the person I consulted with just like trashed my long-term goal. She was like, why would anybody sitting on the committee even relate to what you're saying, right? So it was really helpful to kind of have that knock on the head. And after that, I kind of got the flow of, what I should be doing, and I didn't need to.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next question, and Anjali can join us back. So this is a question for Priyanka. Since you wanted to switch to a finance field, what extracurriculars or courses did you pursue to support your application?
Right. So, firstly, what I did is I started as a technical consultant, and 2 years down in my career, I shifted from a technical consultant to to a finance consultant. So I was still working on transformations, on technical transformations for Fortune 500 companies, but I was focusing on the finance bit. And then once I got a lot of exposure on that, since I know I want to be working on transactions, I said, okay, let me pick up revenue. So I somehow streamlined this in my work experience. I could not get to the entire financial side of it, but I tried in this way. And also, I was in Deloitte, and we had a lot of initiatives going around in our firm. So I would take up a lot of those, and I would try to take up the financial side, the budgeting or anything that came closest to finance, just to get exposure, right? Yeah. So that is all I did.
Great. Anjali, would you want to finish your thought? I know you got disconnected.
No, that's all right. I think it was just about
Right.
being able to break down that package, and being able, if that opportunity does exist, if you don't want to spend the entire amount, there are still options which could really help you fine tune it
Right.
with help. So, just that. Thank you.
Right. I know we're running a lot over time, so if it's okay with you guys, we'll do a quick round of 2, 3 more questions and then wrap it up. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
great. Okay, so the next question is regarding scholarships. So, what are the different kind of scholarships offered, and any specific site to find them?
I think I can take a little first stab at this at least. So, okay, most schools wouldn't ask you for a separate scholarship essay, so it's very school specific. Try and identify, scholarships based on schools. That's the first part. The second thing is some schools, like I think INSEAD and Berkeley Haas, were two schools that ask you to additionally provide a scholarship essay, and there are very specific scholarship questions that they ask you for. So no particular site where you can find all the information, but definitely, it's some research that you'd have to do by talking to current students and getting more insights. Most like top US schools will give you a scholarship based on your application itself. So the strength of your application and a lot of statistics from the school's end decide the scholarship amount and which scholarship you get.
I can go next on that. So I am, while I don't know across, a whole range of schools, I do know for Yale and Haas. In the case of Haas, yes, there is a supplemental scholarship section where you get to put in, your request for scholarship. I got a 50% through the Berkeley grant. And I think, so they have different ways of screening for it. So it's, this one was not related to, my application per se, but a whole range of other factors. In the case of Yale has, I think, 5 scholarships open for Indian students. And this range to different tier of situation. And then also, so I was able to get that. So I think I just want to say this about scholarships, that while, it may come through at the beginning or not, there are ways to, one, negotiate for it, and B, I think, present a case for it. And so there is no shame in going back to that committee and saying, hey, I'd really like to put this to light. Would you reconsider me for the scholarship? All schools have a process for this. And so it's always good to tap into that if you really, if you really need it, or if you feel that you deserve it, feel free to, always do that.
Also, one small point about outside scholarships, like if you reach out to your financial aid office, they will direct you to a list of outside scholarships as well. So if it's not readily available on the website, just reach out to your the AdCom or financial aid team.
Right, some great pointers. We also have a link to a GMAT Club article wherein you can find more about scholarships. So the next question is about basically round 1 and round 2. What are the strategies you use to decide between applying to round 1 versus round 2? Have you answered this already?
I think I've shared my experience between round 1 and round 2, but which school to apply when? I think start with the schools that you are most confident about round 1, and then kind of expand it towards round 2. Just you can diversify. So in case you feel that here's a school that I think, I don't like to think of the concept of a safety school, but yeah, if there are schools that you feel confident about, keep one or two in both rounds, just to be safe. I think the way to look about it is just apply to schools that you're 100% confident that you would go to if you get in. So that's a very good filter to have, and don't mass apply, because it won't help anyone. So that's probably how to look at round 1 and round 2.
Right, great. I think we're way over time, and we can wrap it up with a final question, which is, how do you differentiate stories? How do you find stories to differentiate yourself? An interesting question. Any takers?
I think more than the stories may be common, but what you really did while taking up an initiative or while contributing to something is what differentiates you. Because everybody thinks differently, and when you think differently, the actions you take are different. So, while the story may look similar, the thoughts and actions that you take and the way you think really differentiates you.
Right, great. So we're almost at the fag end of our session. Vandana, if you'd like to go ahead and talk about the initiative you guys are a part of, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you so much. So thanks all for joining us today. We're a part of Students Fight COVID. It's a student-led initiative to raise funds for the COVID crisis in India. We're 250 plus current admits and recent students who've come together. And over the last 2.5 weeks, we've been able to raise 23 lakhs and cater to 350 plus students who've reached out to us for one-on-one consultation, GMAT boot camps, and a lot of more other MBA specific questions. So we'd really be happy to raise more funds, and do reach out to us. We're on www.studentsfightcovid.in, as well as on LinkedIn and Instagram. Please do find us at Students Fight COVID. Yeah.
Great. Also, a touch point, guys. Tomorrow we're having a panel with Oxford and Cambridge admits. So please do set a reminder and attend that as well. And thank you so much, all of you, for taking up the time. I know we are well over time, but still so patiently answering all the questions. It was great having you all here today. I think our viewers also have comments about you. So it's been great having all of you. And to the viewers, take care. Don't forget to attend the panel tomorrow. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Anupama, for the session.
Thank you.